So here we are again on the New York Times because The Athletic was recently bought by them, and now all of the NHL's athletic pieces are published on the New York Times. So it's kind of weird, but The Athletic is still The Athletic, and earlier today we had ourselves this article published by Dom Lucian as to the NHL's 10 worst contracts. Now, of course, The Athletic is paid for material. This is behind a paywall, so instead of going out there and reading the article, let's just go out there, look at the list of names, see who's available, see what's on it, and see why these contracts are labeled as the worst. So to help us out, this actually was posted onto the R Hockey subreddit, and one of the top comments actually goes out there and gives out the list. So, this is Dom Lucian's list of the 10 worst NHL contracts in 24-25. Yeah, my bad, we are a year removed from that. Starting out with the honorable mentions: Pierre-Luc Dubois, Marc-Edouard, Vlasic, Gibson, Anderson, and Brendan Gallagher, and then from 10 to 1, you have all of the regular names listed out over here. Now, in total, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, this is 15 names over here. I don't like to go over 10 minutes for videos, so we'll spend a little bit of time on each of these names. Starting out with the first one, it is PLD, Pierre-Luc Dubois. Yeah, not a surprise that he is on here. $8.5 million AAV cap hit on the Washington Capitals, a guy who had 40 points in 82 games played last year. Honestly, the point production isn't like the worst thing in the world, but his reputation, his on-ice antics, the way that he does not play half the time, it's been very rough for PLD, especially with the benchings and the lowering in the lines and everything. We'll see if that carries over into Washington, but he is listed as an honorable mention for one of the 10 worst contracts in the NHL, as is Josh Anderson and Brendan Gallagher. Yeah, we're skipping over Marc-Edouard, Vlasic, and John Gibson just because, 15 names is a little bit too much here, but the Habs have two guys on this list. Josh Anderson, $5.5 million a year to the end of 2026-2027. He had only 20 points in 78 games played last year. Not good. Really not good. The guy was formerly a 47-point, near 30-goal guy with Columbus, but was never able to replicate that level of success at all with the Montreal Canadiens. He is a pretty expensive player. Marc Bergevin really gave the bag out here to Josh Anderson. And for Brendan Gallagher, unfortunately, even though there was a point in his career where he was worth $6.5 million a year for the Canadiens, it's been a few years since then. He had 30-goal seasons back-to-back in 2017-18 and 18-19 and was a consistent top 6 force out there. But even previously, 31 points, 77 games played. The number is not terrible, but he was a minus 24, and his overall efficiency on the ice just has not been where it needs to be to justify a $6.5 million AAV deal. Although with the Canadiens being in a rebuild, with them not really pushing for too much over the next few seasons, it's kind of okay to have this contract, I would say. Like, it's not the worst thing in the world. The Canadiens are not being prohibited from doing anything else because they have a big contract in Gallagher or in Anderson's clogging everything up. If anything, guys like Suzuki, Caulfield, and Slavkovsky taking up less money on their longer-term deals compensates for the extra money given out to these older veterans. But heading over into the actual list of top 10 worst contracts, starting out with Tyler Seguin, 32 years old, signed till the end of 2027, $9.85 million a year. That's a big, beefy dollar amount. There was a point in his career where he was a point-per-game, if not just under-point-per-game caliber guy. He was one of the top scorers in the NHL in this late 2010s-ish era. But as of late, he's kind of declined. 52 points in 68 games played is not the worst thing in the world, but for $9.85 million a year, it may not actually be worth it. Heading into the next few seasons, though, the Dallas Stars did get some guys signed to some pretty reasonable deals. Tyler Seguin is just one of the longer-term ones that is a little bit overpaid, so I think they're going to be chilling. But either way, Seguin's contract is not necessarily great. Moving over onto the 9th player here on the worst contracts list, Darnell Nurse is a $9 million defenseman. Yeah, and he's going to be a $9 million defenseman until 2030. Yeah. Going over to the point production, I mean, point production for defensemen isn't like the be-all and end-all, but it certainly is an interesting gauge to look at. He hasn't really ever been a top-tier point producer for D, but 30-ish points for a guy who can play the minutes that he does is reasonable enough to have on your team. It's just at $9.25 million, yeah, that's a lot of money. And I think, as we had talked about in the video earlier this morning, a lot of Oilers fans kind of had to come to terms with this contract being a bad one because now it sets the precedent for everybody else. Evan Bouchard is going to have to make more than this if he wants to sign long-term as well, because there's no way Darnell Nurse should be seen as a player more valuable than Evan Bouchard, for example. Moving over on to the 8th worst contract in the NHL, it's another right-handed defenseman, Seth Jones. Another right-handed defenseman? No, Nurse is a left-handed defenseman, my bad. Seth Jones, 6'4", 209, a big dude, also a $9 million guy, $9.5 mil till the end of 2030. The Chicago Blackhawks are going to be rebuilding for a while, so while Seth Jones did have himself a pretty good season to start out his Chicago career because he was like the only guy that was actually capable of playing the power play, heading into the next few seasons, he still has been not great, and the numbers, the dollar amounts, they don't really align into a cohesive unit here. I mean, 2030, he's going to be really old by the time that contract expires. 35, 36, making $9.5 million a season. That's a lot of money for Seth Jones, but at least it's Chicago that's going to go out there and pay it. It's not like they're going to be super competitive over the next 6 years either. Actually, no, 6 years. Yeah, give it a few years for Bedard to really settle in there. Maybe they become competitive in 2027 or whatever, but at that point, Seth Jones will only have 3 more years of this $9.5 million contract remaining. He still, however, is listed as one of the worst contracts in the NHL in 2024. Now, moving over on to the 7th worst contract in the NHL, it is Sean Couturier. 31 years old, signed till the end of 2030 as well, $7.75 million a year. He'll be pretty old himself. 36, 37 years old by the time that contract expires. 38 points in 74 games played this most recent season after missing the entire 2022-2023 season. Of course, Couturier is not really responsible for him having to miss out on that time, but it doesn't bode well for a Philadelphia Flyers team that is trying to start being competitive again. $7.75 mil is a lot of money to commit to a guy, and it's why Couturier is listed as one of the worst contracts in the NHL. Moving over to number 6, you have yourselves Mark Scheifele of the Winnipeg Jets. He had just signed this extension too. $8.5 million a year. This is the first year of that contract that goes on until 2031. He's 31 years old already, so he's pretty old, but this previous season, I mean, he had 72 points in 74 games played. Honestly, I don't really understand why Scheifele is listed on this list. He's a pretty expensive guy, yeah, that's true, but at the same time, I mean, it's not like he's ineffective. If you wanted to make the debate that say that Scheifele is getting worse, then okay, I guess that's your prerogative, but I personally don't see it. I might have to disagree with the Athletic article actually having Scheifele as one of these worst contracts in the NHL, especially worse than Tyler Seguin, Seth Jones, Sean Couturier. Moving over into the top 5, though, let's actually talk about these names over here. Damon Severson is listed on the Columbus Blue Jackets, but again, you know, this is a guy who is playing on a team that's not really supposed to be competitive, so if there's any team going out there that's able to pay it, I feel like Columbus is a totally okay option. $6.25 million a year till 2031. 29-year-old right-handed defenseman who had 28 points in 67 games played last year. At the end of the day, Severson's more of a two-way guy anyway, so it's not like they're getting super crazy point production out of him. He's still listed, however, as one of the worst contracts in the NHL. Moving over onto the 4th worst contract, it is Colton Parayko, another big dude, right-handed defenseman, 6'6", 229, $6.5 million a year till the end of 2030, but he had 26 points in 82 games played last year. Parayko has had better days in St. Louis, but honestly, I don't think this one's that bad compared to some of the other ones here. I mean, 6.5 till 2030, the term isn't as bad as some of these other guys that we have seen, and the dollar amount isn't either. So I kind of disagree with Parayko being this high on the list as well. Then you go over into the top 3 here. Tom Wilson, $6.5 million a year till 2031. He's pretty old as well, and he has been on some sort of a decline, but roughly, you know, honestly, he has been in this similar point production range. It's just compared to last year and the year before that, he certainly has been a little bit worse. I don't know if $6.5 million is that bad in today's cap world, but it still is listed over here. And then you have yourself second overall Chandler Stephenson, who had just gotten signed, 30 years old, signed till 2032. He's going to be 37, making $6.25 million a year, and he has not broken 20 goals more than once in his career. This is a pretty iffy contract, but Seattle was willing to sign it. It is listed as one of the worst here, though, so let me know your thoughts in the comment section about that. And then you have yourselves the first worst contract. Jonathan Huberdeau, 10.05 mil. He had only 52 points in 81 games played last year. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section about this contract, because we don't even need to expand more on this one. Yeah, I think we spent a little bit too much time talking about the guys at the bottom of the list instead of the guys at the top, but either way, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about the 10 worst NHL contracts today and the honorable mentions as well. I hope you enjoyed this video, and bye.